Let's go. So this is the number one question I get on this channel. How many wins do I think LSU will have in their first year under Brian Kelly? So let's actually take a look at two college football experts along with Vegas on how they view the upcoming LSU season. And just right off the jump here, this is Bud Elliott of 247 Sports, who says LSU, this might be a little tough for you to take in, 6.5 wins? Really? That is what the Vegas total is currently sitting at? And right now, Bud Elliott views LSU as a 7-win or more team. He, in fact, likes LSU to go over that 6.5 number. But if you were to bet your life savings at 6.5, and once again, this does not include the bowl game. This is just the 12-win or 12-game regular season. Right now, that number is at 6.5. So a little bit later, I'm going to give you my favorite college football handicappers view on how LSU looks going into next year. But for right now, let's just pull up the LSU schedule itself. Boom, I'm looking at you. Yes, you, okay? Now, let's take a look at this schedule as objectively as we possibly can. I know we're LSU fans. I know we're super excited about Brian Kelly, one of the winningest college football coaches of all time, coming over and taking over LSU. And of course, we looked at Ed Orgeron and we looked at Les Miles and said this guy is way better and far more accomplished. So that means LSU is for sure going to hit the ground running and have a ton of success. And I hope that is true. But I do want to clear up one thing. Let's be honest about this schedule, okay? How many games on the schedule do you think we would 100,000% win? And you notice I only had 3 games checked here, and that is the 3 non-Power 5 games, okay? That's a tough thing to say, right? We're so used to penciling in LSU wins. Les Miles with an unprepared team, with all the talent that we had, we could for sure just beat Mississippi State, Ole Miss, whoever else. Of course, we lost to them a few times in there because less was less, but still, you felt more comfortable about the schedule. Now, I am going to include Auburn in here. I don't think they're any good. I think they lost too much on defense. I don't like what they have at head coach, even though they beat us last year. And I don't like what they have at quarterback. So I think LSU has a clear quarterback and head coach advantage, even though they have to play that game on the road. So I think LSU is 1,000% sure going to win all 4 of these games. So that's the thing about sharp bettors. They don't care about your team or your talent. They just want to know what is your floor, the bare minimum amount of wins. And once again, in 2018 or 2019, if the 2022 Tigers played those teams on the schedule, this would be the bare amount of wins. I would even say 7, 1 win smaller than this. And now with the teams the way they currently are, it's only 4. What about the quarterback? How many games on the schedule would you say LSU has a quarterback advantage? And oh, well, it's the same exact chart. LSU's going to play a lot of talented quarterbacks this year, right? The Travis kid for Florida State's a very tricky guy. Mississippi State, Will Rogers. Tennessee, Hendon Hooker is the best quarterback that they've had in quite some time. Florida with Anthony Richardson's a dual threat maven. And then, of course, Jackson Dart at Ole Miss had a rough spring game. But, I mean, Ole Miss, of course, Lane Kiffin's going to have better quarterback play. And then Alabama, Arkansas with KJ and the reigning Heisman winner Bryce Young. And then Texas A&M, I'm not in love with their quarterback room. I would take our quarterback room over their quarterback room. But still, we're not way better at quarterback than they are either. So that's where it gets tricky. So now let me show you how I feel about the upcoming schedule as far as wins and losses are concerned. And before we do that, we want to shout out our friends once again at the Prezi Collection and Prezi Collection. Get there now, promo code PHL, and you're getting an extra $30 off this DBU watch with the Prezi Collection. Now, you're going to look at this schedule and you're going to see some emojis, right? The smile emojis, I'm a little bit more comfortable with saying that those will be wins. The monocle emojis are going to be tricky. So let's start off with these first couple of games. Yes, I feel LSU looks pretty good to go 5-0 to start the year, even though we don't know what LSU has at quarterback, and it more so has to say about what those teams have. I think LSU, with Florida State once again being in shambles, I feel good about winning that game in New Orleans. However, during that 5-game stretch, I do think LSU more than likely will lose one of those opening games to start the year at 4-1. Now, the next 3 get really tricky considering the quarterbacks, the coaches, and those being 3 games with no bye weeks before it, or really after it outside of the Ole Miss game. And that's where, you would hope LSU in a best case scenario would go 2-1 in those games. I consider all 3 of those games coin flips. I know you might feel comfortable about Tennessee in Tiger Stadium, but reminder here, Tennessee will be coming off a bye week going into that game, and LSU will be coming off their first true road game in that spot. So I feel best case that they are going to go 2-1 during that stretch. And if they do go 2-1 after a 4-1 start, that means LSU is off to a 6-3 start in the first year under Brian Kelly, and that would simply be incredible. Now, these final 4 games is where it gets really brutal. Of course, UAB is going to be a W, but Alabama, this is going to be their best team. Since 2020, they're really good. We're coming off a bye, and yes, that game is in Tiger Stadium, but still, I don't feel comfortable about that one. That Arkansas game is going to be really tough as well with KJ Jefferson at quarterback, and then, of course, Texas A&M at Kyle Field. I know Texas 8-4, they're not that good, but Jimbo is a far better play caller at home than he is on the road. Also, Texas A&M has a bunch of rent-to-wins going into the final portion of their season. They have to go to Jordan-Hare. Auburn's going to be bad next year, and I think they play UMass the week before us. So they're going to be well-rested and ready to go for that game at home. So I don't feel great about LSU winning that one up to this point, but I still think their quarterback room has a lot to sort itself out with. I didn't say that well at all. I'm just not a full believer in the Texas A&M hype train going into next year. So if I have 2 losses minimum at the end of the season and a bunch of 50-50 games in the middle, I have LSU at around anywhere from a 7-5 to 9-3 team going into next year. But this is where it gets really, really fascinating, because if I feel LSU's semi-floor here is 7-5, then you should feel pretty good about taking the over if the number is at 6.5. Right? So here's the thing. I'm going to need your help in the comment section. How many wins do you think LSU is actually going to get next year? And, well, I'll say this. The Action Network, one of my favorite sites, has LSU as a 5-win team according to their model. In fact, Auburn, who we all think is the worst team in the SEC West, 6.26 wins, a full win better than LSU according to their model. Colin Wilson's a writer at the Action Network. He's one of my favorites. He has some skepticisms about LSU as well. So once again, I love the Action Network. I've gotten a lot of good information from them. 5 wins, and their number according to WinBet for the over-under is actually at 6 instead of 6.5, which is what Bud Elliott shared. So once again, that number is going to vary sportsbooks to sportsbook, and even Colin Wilson said LSU would be the most difficult team to handicap. Now, I want to show you another stat here from Pete Thamel's deep dive on ESPN about Brian Kelly. He has won his last 40 games as a favorite, and on top of that, this is crazy. 94.2% of the time Notre Dame has won as a favorite under Brian Kelly, which is one of the best marks in all of college football. So that's the thing. How many games do you view on that schedule LSU as a favorite? It's kind of tough to say, but I would say that there are a few there. At the very least, I see 4 or 5. So 5 does seem to be really low, but once again, the Action Network, they get a lot of things right, and hopefully they are wrong about this. So once again, comment down below your thoughts on today's video. It's still very early. There's a lot that's going to change. Heck, we don't even know who the quarterback's going to be. And then, of course, You have this variable as well with the play callers. What is Matt House's defense going to look like next year? I still don't think we really know. And what's the offense going to look like? That, of course, is going to vary based on who your quarterback is going to be. I think with some of the other teams in the West, such as Arkansas and Alabama, and even Texas A&M in particular, you have a good idea of what their offense and defense is going to look like, how it's going to be called. With LSU, there are just so many variables when it comes to getting it. But once again, I mean, if you're so confident out there that LSU is going to go over 6, I mean, bare minimum 7-5, I guess you should look into that. Once again, none of this is betting advice, but I'm just sharing with you what some of the markers out there have to say about LSU. Now, if you want some film breakdowns of the Tigers, it'll be floating in your face in just a second. It is Power Hour LSU. Bam! I'm currently in England right now. So, I know it's kind of weird because it's like pre-recorded. And tonight, I don't know what we're having. Hopefully some fish and chips. Let's go.